Thank you so much for logging on to StateChamps.tv. Perhaps you're watching this on Facebook. This is another edition of the OT with Markowski. Still beautiful weather here.
Gorgeous
in the fall,
today.
So we are definitely appreciative of that.
Keeping away from the rain.
Absolutely. All right. Well, this is one of those topics as we begin here that you know it's coming. That day is coming, and that day is when some of these high school coaching legends here in Michigan finally take a step aside and let somebody else call the shots. And right now, you want to talk about a couple that are maybe right around the corner. You don't know that, but give us your insight as far as Brother Rice's Al Fracassa and Utica Eisenhower's Bob Lancey.
Well, you always speculate on when Al's going to retire. There was rumors last year after they lost that tough game to Farmington Hills Harrison in that first round. Brother Rice is having another good year. It all depends on how Al feels. I know he feels like he's a little under pressure now trying to get that 400th victory, and we all hope that he gets it this weekend. It'd be great for him to do it in Ohio because they seem to go to Ohio every year. But you have to think,
in the playoffs.
Right, they need that victory to get in the playoffs. If they don't win that one, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
But you also have to think about what's going to happen after when Al retires. Who's going to carry on his great legacy there? And I kind of think that's going to be Dave Sofrin, who's been under Al for a while, played for Al at Brother Rice, offensive coordinator, a good mind. Kids really respect him. I think everybody in the community at Brother Rice respects him. So I look for Dave Sofrin to really take over that program. And it's kind of a tough spot, too. You think about replacing a legend like Al Fracassa and how much pressure there will be on that one person who is named head coach. And we all know that head coach is only as good as their assistants. And you can see that anytime there's a good program, that head coach might run things as an oversee, but it's really the D coordinator, the offensive coordinator, who handles the special teams, who handles the offensive and defensive lines that are so important to the program.
And you've got, just for kicks and giggles, there's a couple of, I guess you could say, celebrated names that are out there, too, that have Rice connections. Scott Merchant
comes to mind.
Of course, it's Don McLean.
Don McLean, who is at Country Day.
Yeah.
And I think, those names are going to pop up. I'm sure when Al finally decides to, hang it up, so to speak, that those names will pop up into their, the repertoire or the list of candidates. Right. But you wonder, I talked to Scott over the years and, him being settled at Clinton Township, Chippewa Valley, he'd have to make that move. Sure, in the back of his mind, he might want to coach Brother Rice, but, that we'll see what, that comes. Sofrin's been a part of that program so long, I'm thinking that he might be the most viable candidate.
Do you think that they would entertain at any time going outside of the program, somebody with no connections to Brother Rice?
Yeah, boy, that would be a stretch, I think. I think they wanted to keep the continuity. You think about the younger kids coming up. Let's say Al does retire after this year. You think about the freshman program now, the kids that are there, the junior varsity, and all of them being so familiar with the coaches that are there now. I think they'd want to keep that continuity.
All right, well, what about over at Utica?
Well, I think they're great. Candidate would be Chris Smith, the defensive coordinator at Utica Eisenhower, a Michigan State grad, played on the line for the Spartans. And you look at Eisenhower's defense, early on, if we go back 10, 12 years, Eisenhower's offense is what really caught everybody's attention.
That's right.
But recently, it's really been Eisenhower's defense that's really been the forte of that program. And Smith is really a cornerstone, a real stabling force in that program. And I think Bob Lancey would probably like nothing better when he decides to retire, which could be at the end of this year, to see Chris take over. And I think Chris would make a great coach.
I'm just going to go out on a limb, and I don't think that Bob is ready to retire.
It
because
depends.
I think now he's seeing. There were a couple of years where I think they were. I don't want to say middle of the pack, but not the dominant program. It looks like really they've turned that kind of turned it around a little bit, and they're making noise this year. And who knows? I think that they're building a foundation. Maybe not this year is all I'm saying, but he is at number 300. That's where he's at.
He's coming up to 300 this weekend against Chippewa Valley. That's a good point because you look at the beginning of the season, I look at some of the stronger junior classes, and you got to look at Brother Rice and Eisenhower, both strong junior classes. Is that enough to keep Al Fracassa at Rice and Bob Lansing at Eisenhower? I think a lot has to tell during the state playoffs.
You know, is Bob a teacher at Eisenhower?
No, he's out of it. He's just a coach like Al. Al resigned
I knew Al
as a teacher a long time ago, and
yeah.
Quite a few years ago anyway.
Right.
So I think, football is so much a part of both of those men's life, and it's going to be tough when they finally say, I've had enough.
Yeah.
So maybe they will wait another year.
Yeah, no doubt. All right.
We could be premature on all
there's
this.
no question about it. Well, one thing that you've noticed is that, and I've noticed, and it's something that I'm always shocked when there isn't a particular attention paid more towards the kicking game and developing a solid kicking game, because we've seen so many times where that is the difference in a ball game, not just at the high school level or all levels,
sure.
but at the high school level, it's often ignored, and when it is called upon to be a focus of an attack, it can be a huge weapon.
Right. You look at, Kyle Brinza last year for Plymouth. What a phenomenal kicker. And he was such an important part of that football team. And this year, again, you saw Plymouth beat Canton late in that game last week on a 40-yard field goal. Zuzo. And he was the one that had the onside kick that they recovered.
That's right.
And he's their long-range kicker. That was the first field goal he made all season. Plymouth is such a solid team as far as its special teams. They have more than one kicker. And I was also watching Walled Lake Western against Walled Lake Central the night before, and the same thing with them. They had a different guy doing the kickoffs as opposed to the player that was doing the field goal tries and the extra points. And both of them were phenomenal. One's a senior, one's a sophomore. And what I find, I think they're expanding there. I think before you might have had the one player that you said, okay, you're going to do the kickoffs, you're going to do the place kicking, and maybe even do the punting. Now it's more specialized. Well, let's see how long you can kick it. We don't really care, concerned about accuracy, because we have this other player that we can, count on for the 30-yarder, the 35-yarder.
PATs.
Right. And then that longer kicker who may be doing the kickoffs into the end zone, you might try the 50, the 55-yarder. Zuzo said he made a 61-yarder in practice.
Well, that 40-yarder or whatever it was, it went 50.
It went easily 50.
I can tell you
I could see where he could make a 55-yarder in the game. And you look at, and not to pick on Brother Rice, but that's kicking game has really cost them some victories this year. Extra points missed in overtime twice, and it's happened to other schools too. Of course, the knock against the PSL that they don't develop their special teams, their kickers. I think a part of this, you look at Plymouth's soccer program, you look at Walled Lake Western soccer program, and Brother Rice's soccer program for that matter. They're all strong soccer programs, and you get those players that do dual action during the fall season, and just have them come in, practice for 20 minutes with the team and then go back to soccer practice. And unfortunately for the PSL teams, there's not a lot of soccer programs in the city. Western is one, but I think that really keeps some teams from advancing in the playoffs and having maybe instead of, let's say, an 8-3 season, they're stuck with a 7-4 season. They didn't get past that second round. So
I'll give credit to Thomas Wilcher at Cass Tech because he does have a dedicated place kicker, and that's all he's basically there for. And I was chatting with him at the King game. He's sitting on the sideline, and he's doing his warm-ups. And, again, he had kicked a field goal or whatever. And whether, you have that translates to a lot of success or not, at least they are addressing the point that they need somebody who's there to do that winning time when they need it.
Yeah, a specialized player. Now, you look at King, Dennis Norfleet. He handles the putting, the kickoffs, the place kicking. I don't know what else the kid can do, but my point is, it's too bad they can't find another student at school to come out, have a trial run, just have a day where all the kids come out and kick the football, see if you can find a player. And the thing is, in college, it's different. You're limited by your scholarships. And of course, you can get walk-ons, but high school, you can get as many kids. If you want 150, if you got enough room for the kids on the bus, so to speak, you can have as many players as you want.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, speaking of limits, that's what our next
subject is. That's a good transition.
Yes, it is. Good segue. Talk about it. What's on your mind?
Well, I think you look at colleges and the new NFL contract, too, where they're limiting practice time, the amount of contact you do during the week. And obviously, recently, Michigan got in trouble with the NCAA for the extra practice time that they were doing. There was no limits in high school. You think about it, the kids can lift as long as they want. 7-on-7s is a growing area where athletes are, bettering themselves, getting more notoriety, maybe improving their skills along with it. But they could practice any time during the week if they wanted to practice 3 hours. Now, this time of year, if you talk to head coaches, they don't want to use their kids too long in practice. They find that they're getting bored, and as the season goes on, they're banged up.
Right.
You don't want them with the contact drills as much. But you look at, in the preseason scrimmages, the double sessions. Hey, there is no limit. I'm not sure that's right. Then again, I'm not sure how you limit that. Is it?
Has there ever been?
No, not to my knowledge. And some of the coaches say, talking to Chris Bell with Lake Orion, because he lost so many players from last year to starters. He said, Tom, I had 17 practice days. Nothing against Oxford in that opener, but they weren't ready.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for Lake Orion, their easier schedule happened earlier in the season. His linemen were able to gain experience that way, more reps, and that no limit, rule, as it were, or lack of thereof, helps a team like Lake Orion and then anybody else that needs more practice time with their players. So I think
how do you suggest you impose limits? What would you suggest?
I think you could do something during the regular season. For instance, maybe limit contact, to Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because if you're playing Friday, you're not going to have contact drills, and you could limit the time. But then, if you impose those rules, how do you police it? That would be the tough thing to do. You have 607 schools playing football in the state, and 11-man football. How do you, as an organization, I think that would be too much for the MHSA to do.
Right.
But what they could do is do it down to the local level. Have representatives of the leagues, pass out, information on the limits that they could have for their players. Now, I think in the off season, that's a whole different thing, where you're, lifting weights, conditioning, maybe going through the 7-on-7s, and once you start preseason practice, then you're trying to get as much as reps as you can. I'm not sure you can really limit that, but maybe during the regular season.
All right. Okay.
Because they're younger kids.
Absolutely.
They're not as developed as
that's
the 25-year-old.
Right. And with concussions and all that, it is an issue, no doubt about it. All right, well, that's a good debate. Good debate. Definitely make sure you join Tom and I on the radio. Tom actually is going to be gone next week. He will not
I'll
be there.
In your old stomping grounds,
That's
Southern
right.
California.
That's right. He'll be on SoCal, and we'll have his colleague from the Detroit News, Rod Beard, joining us. That's next Friday on the State Champs Friday Night High School Football Show. You can listen to it on WDFN, 11:30 a.m. from 10 to midnight, and we'll have another issue. When do you leave?
I leave on Wednesday night. So
all right. So we'll make sure we get in another
We'll get another OT in before that.
All right. Sounds good. We'll see you next week.